Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Assalamu alaikum. We welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media Network out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news. We advise you on what you can do about it. In what is known here in America as Black History Month, it also happens to be the month of Shaban, less than 2 weeks from the blessed month of Ramadan. Our title for today is The Struggle Continues. I think a very fitting title for this time that we as a global community are in. I want to begin today's broadcast given the fact that February is also the month in which one of the most significant figures of the 20th century, El-Hajj Mauri Malcolm X, was martyred February 26, 1965. And 2025, the year that we just said goodbye to, marked the 100th anniversary of his birth. So today we want to begin our broadcast with a very special interview that was conducted with one of his daughters, Atala Shabazz. It's thought-provoking, and there's something else that for me is special about the interview, and the fact that she spent quite a bit of time also talking about her mother, Dr. Betty Shabazz, or Sister Bahia Shabazz, as she's also known. And may Allah be pleased with both El-Hajj Mauri Shabazz and Sister Bahia Shabazz. So without any further ado, let's see that very special piece of video, my brother.
Malcolm X, a Muslim, a martyr, a man once willing to right a wrong by any means necessary. He later altered his views on how to achieve racial equality. Today on Bay Sunday, get to know Malcolm X through the eyes of his oldest daughter, Ms. Atala Shabazz.
It's really revolution. It's really revolution.
Good morning. Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm Barbara Rogers. This morning, we're on location with a very special guest, Ms. Atala Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X. What was it like growing up as the daughter of Malcolm X, with everything that went with that in terms of what people thought about him, both the good and the bad?
I was fine being the daughter of Daddy. I didn't respond to being the daughter of Malcolm X as perceived by someone else. I didn't know how to do that. So being the daughter of Daddy was easy. You know, my father was my friend and quite paternal, but also a buddy. So I was not encumbered, or didn't permit myself to be encumbered by what the neighbors thought.
What do you remember most about him?
I remember much about him. I think one of the things that is consistent was his concern, his energy, vulnerability, gentleness, humor, and yet firm.
What was a day like with him when you were a child?
Well, it varied on what the day was. All of it seemed normal to me. So someone else would think it's a separate or a poignant thing. For me, it was a rhythm that was very natural, where I hear that children can refer to parts of their childhood and feel resentment that their parent wasn't home. I don't recall feeling any resentment. when your parent presents their life, your life to you as if it is normal, hence wonderful as it is, I didn't have any complaints or I missed Daddy when he was gone. I missed Mommy when she was gone. When he was abroad, he was still present because he would write letters and treasure map kind of expeditions for us to hop one time, turn around, look underneath, turn over, and you'd stumble across something left there from him, from my mother, love letters. And to see that in her was wonderful.
When you were young, did you have the sense that he was famous or that of the importance of what he was doing?
No, not in the importance in the way that I know it and understand importance now. I didn't know what you thought about him. I hadn't given concern to what another person thought. I knew that people responded to him. And I thought that was normal. Also, what I didn't appreciate is when the attention disrupted the household, such as a Sunday afternoon when all the brothers from the temple came over. Suddenly children should be seen and not heard. That's different, because my household wasn't like that. I speak to people who grew up in that organization, children who grew up in that organization, and they were rigid households. There were rules.
And yours wasn't rigid?
No, there was always a heartbeat. We could laugh in my house. And I listened to people who assumed that my father's house would have been much stricter because he was a loyal, dedicated servant of the Nation of Islam. No, we laughed a lot on the floor.
You make it sound as though there was a lot of sort of roughhousing and I get this image of you being tickled by him, in fact.
Forever. And him tickled by us.
Yeah.
And my parents romantic in their presentation and demonstration. You know, him falling asleep with his head on her lap while, you know, gentleness, camaraderie, friendship. I didn't know until I was 19 that there were rules and expectations of what a man is to do and what a woman is to do. I saw strength and vulnerability in them both.
When you began to realize that there was a different image of him that the world had, how did you deal with that?
They didn't know who I knew. Simple as that.
But did it hurt at all
No,
to hear people say things that were
no,
negative?
because I knew they didn't know him. I knew specifically that was an assessment made from limited information. You didn't know him like I knew him.
There are two, of course, tragic incidents in which it totally intruded and changed your life forever. Let's talk first of all about the bombing. Do you remember that?
Certainly.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember the chaos, the Molotov cocktail in our bedroom, the fire, my sister crying because fire got in her eye, she said, or spark or something got in her eye. And we were scurried out the back door, very smoke-filled at this point. But yet there was a safety because both of my parents were right there and the rhythm got us out. And so it's February 14th, winter in Queens, New York. We were in the driveway of the house as all the mayhem was being dealt with. And we were then taken to friends' homes where we stayed for a number of months.
What did your parents tell you afterwards?
Well, there were things going on beforehand. You know, you knew that friends who were once in your life were no longer friends. That was clear. The house surroundings, we were being stalked. People that you once recognized as comrades were now in cars around the corner, up the block, in front of the house, passing by, looking at you differently, not even giving a greeting. So it's not that a lot was said, yet a lot was conveyed.
And I heard my husband say, everything is all right, everything is all right. And someone about third or so that was seated in about the third row stood up, and I heard shots. I knew they had shot my husband.
Yes, I do believe there'll be further attempts on my life. I know them. They're foaming at the mouth. The rank and file Muslim means well. It's those at the hierarchy who are living off the fatted calf, who don't mean well.
And then there was that other February day. Tell me about that.
Well, it was not regular that at this point that we attended fairs where my father was speaking. And now that we were living with a family that was already close with us, there's a different kind of jovialness that kept us busy as children. And that Sunday morning, my father called and invited us to come, which I thought was odd. Again, for a child, you respond to the rhythm. And that was a different beat. My mother was happy, and of course, we're all excitedly getting dressed to go see Daddy. Yet on the ride over, the rhythm kept a question for me, even young. And while people feel that perhaps children don't sense or understand, because of what I can recall vividly, as if it is yesterday, I don't put anything past children. I don't do or say anything around children, things that I don't want them to remember. And we got there. We got there before he did. And there was some concern because my father was a stickler for time. And he came 40 to 45 minutes late. And I remember when he walked in, we said, there he is, there. And I heard my mother say, there's my husband. And she always said that. I mean, she says it the same way now with such coup, you know.
Pride.
More, well, pride, yes, but it's more like that cooey kind. It's different.
Love.
Yeah, mushy love. I mean, like all the way love. That surrendering love. And she said, there's my husband. And he went backstage to the green room. And things were tense. The person who was introducing him kept changing the format, changing the agenda, the order of things to discuss, because he was to come right out, especially being late. And he didn't. And when he finally did, wasn't 5 minutes, and our life changed.
Can you talk about what you remember from that day?
Oh, I saw the gentleman stand up. I saw the commotion that is often replayed, that is reenacted in the film that is coming out. That was done in Roots 2. The commotion there. It's one of those things that my father was not shot from a bush onto a rooftop or a balcony. My father didn't have some miscellaneous gunman in a library window. There were people present. There were other people wounded. The perpetrators were familiar. You couldn't get in that room unless somebody knew who you were. So when people attempt to dismiss the hands that pulled the trigger, you really cannot. It's just that they've gotten away with it only because of the silence of those present.
Now, what happened to you immediately afterwards? I mean, kind of play that out
We
for
were
me.
all scurried. We hit the floor, and I mean, really a lot of mayhem. 7 or 8 people were shot. Chairs were falling over. Those were those wooden chairs that you set up in an old ballroom. And after everything had calmed down a bit, we were scurried to the back green room. And shortly thereafter, once he was taken out and across the street to the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, or on his way, I was standing alongside the wall, looking right into the eye of one of the men who I knew. I just recently experienced the death of my godfather. It was not easy. It was as if it was 27 years now. It was not easy. And the feeling of being robbed came back. But we move ahead.
Now, that's, of course, what your family did. Your mother, who has been applauded as a remarkable woman, How did you look at her when you were growing up?
Oh, my mother was my world. Not only just simply because I thought so, but I watched my father love her. She was beautiful to him. Hence, to me, no one was more beautiful than my mother. That you know, chinky-eyed smile, beautiful brown face, the warmth that she exuded, humor, that to me was what was beautiful. My mother's dedication and love and commitment to my father, I think, is what has sustained her over the last 27 years. I, as her daughter, wish for her an easier time. She gave up a lot, her youth. Having been in love and having been loved, I don't know if she's received flowers the same way, if she's gotten candy or the compliments the same way. And God forbid, if you know what love feels like, you wish you could have it forever. To our dearest mother, my father's brown sugar, his apple brown Betty, on behalf of your children, mother, on behalf of our children, thank you. You have represented for us, your daughters, undying strength, tenacity. You stand for the epitome of womanhood, Mom, motherhood, and though it may not show, a seed has been planted. And all that you gave to us on behalf of your undying love for our Father, who is absent, though present spiritually, you have won.
Now, we've talked a lot about your life, and you've seen the movie that is coming out in November. How much of all this that you've been telling me about the love and the wonderful feeling that your mother and father had for each other, that you had for your father, the kind of father he was, how much of that did you see in the movie?
The movie, titled Malcolm X, I believe, is an enjoyable movie. It's a good movie. It's an informative movie. It's a movie. The first time I saw it, of course, there were periods in the movie that did not duplicate the compassion that I knew, but I'm not telling the movie. I'm not doing the movie. And unless those who were forming the movie came to those who were able to fill in those blanks, they could not invent it.
How do you feel about the casting, the person who's playing your father?
Well, the casting overall is quite good. My grandmother's being portrayed by Lynette McKee and exudes to me what I imagine my grandmother to be young, since I only knew her as an older woman. What's missing from my grandmother in the movie is her accent. My grandmother was not American. And if you know a non-American, you can't fake it. You can't fake, to me, that's an ingredient. For me, being a Caribbean American is a very necessary ingredient to
Your grandmother was from
Grenada. And when she died 2 years ago, she was very much still very old world. But that's not anything that someone else will miss. That's only me looking for that. Lynette McKee did an excellent job in terms of presence and strength. I felt the woman in her while on screen. Look forward to meeting her as a result of her portraying it. My mother was portrayed by Angela Bassett, who is the mother in Boys in the Hood. Warm, strong, beautiful brown woman. In her silence, while in the film, it wasn't just the meek little Muslim wife, as people imagine, but her silence was one that I'm watching my husband's back, because that's what my mother was doing.
So that was an accurate portrayal in some sense.
In terms of what energy, in terms of the text, that's different. But in terms of the energies, in terms of casting, the presence represented in the movie.
And how about Malcolm?
I think that Mr. Washington has done his best work in this film. It's a difficult range to do in terms of not only being 16 to 39, but the different evolutions or changes that my father went through in his own life that had to be depicted in the movie. And I have to applaud him for his research and attempt to capture.
I suspect it would be hard for anyone to portray your father and have you feel that's daddy.
I didn't go looking for daddy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go looking for mommy. I didn't go looking for grandma. They jumped out on the screen as women that I respect. Then I named it Louise. Then I named it Betty. In terms of someone playing Malcolm, I could never expect someone to become my daddy, but become a likable person, become a person that when I watch, I want to be like. You could name it anything you want. One thing that is missing for me from the movie is the laughter. Heartbeat from the beginning. That even while tormented by the memories of what happened to his family, his own family, and living in the streets, there was a likable brother with the rhythms of the street, with the wit that is not different than the wit he was known for when he was the adult man that we got to know. But I don't know if anybody else will miss that. So I'm not looking for anyone to duplicate what I know, just to start the interest in people's search or quest to study and be fair about the assessments of a man. I just hope that with the movie and the ease now to do other things, whether they're documentaries or interviews or more stories, that it allows people to get to see the flower, the bouquet of Malcolm Shabazz's life.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was delightful to chat with you today. And thank you for being with us today. And that is it for this edition of Bay Sunday. We'll be back again next Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Hope you'll be here too. Have a good week. Goodbye.
I've never at any time made any statement that anybody can even interpret to indicate that I believe in initiating acts of aggression or violence indiscriminately against people.
No.
I don't have to raise a call to action. And this is what I'm trying to make white people see. They have lost their ability to be objective where the race problem is concerned, primarily because they know that no real meaningful results have come from the Negro struggle. And in defense of this, they always call it or label it violence.
You really believe that any meaningful result is going to come from violence?
It's not a case of violence. I think that, see, if you could get away from looking at it as violence, then you would be objective and see that actually all it is a tendency to react to what they are confronting. White people don't realize how frustrated Negroes have become.
You have changed your attitude about the white man in the United States to some extent.
Well, I've broadened my scope. Travel broadens your scope. It gives you a wider understanding. And I have, in my many lectures on college campuses, seen many whites, even as a black Muslim.
Are you not, perhaps, afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
Touching interview. This is the first time I for me, seen this interview that Atala did with this lady who did an excellent job in exploring not only El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan, Malcolm X, but, you know, Bahia Shabazz, Sister Betty Shabazz. I mean, it was very touching. And I don't think we give enough attention to the very prominent, more often than not, behind the scenes impact that women have had in the lives of men who receive a tremendous amount of attention because of the role that they play in the struggle for change. El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. It can just go on down the line. There's another extraordinary lady that I would like to shed some light on in today's shortened program. This is going to be a shortened program than what it normally is. But there is another lady that I would like to shed some light on, the wife of another very prominent male figure that played, that had a tremendous impact on me. Even though I never met him, I was never in the same space with him, the same as with Malcolm. When Malcolm was assassinated, I was a young boy. And I didn't get to know Malcolm until, years later, years after his assassination. It was maybe, I guess, 7 or 8 years after he was assassinated. And then that's when I became aware of him through the book that was written on his life, the autobiography of Malcolm X with Alex Haley. This is what brought this huge figure to my attention, and it was a few years after his assassination. And I must say that book by Alex Haley, it had a tremendous impact on me. Tremendous impact. I mean, you could call it a revolutionary impact it had on me. It literally changed my life, and it began a journey without me knowing it toward the fold of Islam. But that's another story for another day. Inshallah ta'ala, what I'd like for us to do now is take a commercial break, and then we'll come back on the other side with some information about another very special lady who had enormous impact for the time that she lived. Welcome back. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I want now to go to something that just came to my attention a few days ago, and I was deeply touched by it. I wish I knew exactly who the source is. You know, one of the things that I did, because I was concerned about accuracy, and I wanted to be sure that when I shared this information that I was sharing something that was accurate. And with the research that I did after this bit of information came to my attention, I have been able to confirm the accuracy of this narrative. Now, this narrative doesn't come from me. This was composed by someone else, but it is very powerful. It's very powerful. And so I want to share it and say thank you, a hearty thank you to whoever the author of this narrative is. Paul Robeson is a figure that has been one of the, like El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. He has been one of the most formative, impactful figures in my life. I'm among those aware of him who have been disturbed that he has not received the kind of attention that he deserves. And that is not by chance. You know, at the time when Paul Robeson was at his height, I mean, this is someone who was a scholar at Rutgers University, and he was a man of letters. He played football and was a star football player. But he was known for his intellect as well. And as he continued to evolve and develop, you know, he became this big star of stage and screen, known internationally, known and celebrated internationally. And then there came a point when during the McCarthy era, he became a target. He became a target of the McCarthy area. And at one point they took away his passport. And I just recently learned that they took away his wife's passport as well. And they did as much as they possibly could to prevent him from being able to earn a living during the time that he was blacklisted for his alleged ties to communism. Now, his story is a very interesting story, and perhaps one day, inshallah ta'ala, we will do a broadcast specifically on Paul Robeson, because again, he was a very formative figure in my life. But for today, I want to focus some attention on his wife. Her name was Islanda Good Robeson. Islanda Good Robeson. And she was a truly remarkable woman. So we had, in the first part of today's broadcast, we had not only a focus on El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan, Malcolm X, but also on his outstanding, a truly exceptional wife, Sister Bahia, or Betty Shabazz, as she's also known. And now we want to segue into the wife of Paul Robeson, who was an extraordinary figure in her own right. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. The narrative reads as follows. Mrs. Robeson, this is a quote. Mrs. Robeson, are you a member of the Communist Party? The senator leaned forward. The cameras flashed. The room went silent. It was July 7th, 1953. Senator Joseph McCarthy and his committee were at the height of their power. They could destroy a life with a single question. They expected the woman in the witness chair to tremble. They expected her to plead the Fifth Amendment, to cry, or to beg for mercy. They expected the wife, quote unquote. Eslanda Good Robeson adjusted the microphone. Now keep in mind, visualize this. She's on Capitol Hill, having to appear, no doubt, by virtue of subpoena. She was a subpoena to appear before the House Un-American Committee. This was a very powerful and oppressive committee that was led at the time by Joseph McCarthy, who would later go down in a bit of ashes. But at this time, he was at his height, the height of his power. He and the other white men that formed that committee, I remember seeing video tape of them ordering Paul Robeson to appear before them and a host of others. And in the majority of cases, just the appearance before this committee at the height of the Cold War, it ruined lives. But they didn't break Paul Robeson, and I just recently discovered that they did not break the wife of Paul Robeson, Eslanda Good Robeson. So getting back to the narrative, Eslanda Good Robeson adjusted the microphone. She looked at the panel of powerful white men who were hunting un-American activities. She didn't look scared. She looked bored. And then she smiled. I am a second-class citizen in this country, she told them. Her voice clipped and precise. And because I am a second-class citizen, I am an anti-fascist, quote unquote. When they pressed her, she didn't defend herself. She attacked them. She lectured the United States Senate on the reality of racism. She told them that the real un-American activity wasn't reading Marx. It was Jim Crow. The senators were stunned. They were used to breaking people, but you couldn't break Eslanda Robeson, because long before she was the wife of the most famous black man in the world, she was a genius who had already conquered a world destined to keep her out. 30 years earlier, Essie, as she was known, wasn't a political target. She was a scientist. In the 1920s, a black woman in a laboratory was unheard of, but Islanda was the head histological chemist at Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. She was the first black person to ever hold the position. She was brilliant, surgical, a master of detail. She was on track to become a medical doctor. Then she met a young law student named Paul Robeson. He was talented, charismatic, and football star handsome. But he was unfocused. Islanda saw the raw material. She saw the potential for a king. So she made a calculation. She sacrificed her scientific career to become the architect of his. She became the world's first momager before the term existed. She negotiated the contracts. She bullied the studio heads. She wrote the biography. She took Paul Robeson and turned him into a global icon. But she refused to live in his shadow. While Paul was singing on stage, Islanda was in the library. She went to the London School of Economics. She studied anthropology under the legendary Bronislaw Malinowski. In 1946, she did something that terrified the colonial powers. She traveled to Africa. She didn't go as a tourist. She went as a scholar. She traveled through Uganda, the Congo, and South Africa. She sat with tribal leaders and future revolutionaries. She wrote African Journey, a book that dismantled the lie that Africa was savage and needed white rule. She argued for Pan-Africanism, the idea that Black people around the world were connected and powerful. The U.S. government watched her. They realized that Mrs. Robeson wasn't just a singer's wife. She was a threat. So they came for her. In the 1950s, the State Department confiscated Paul and Islanda's passports. They were effectively prisoners in the United States for 8 years. And let me say something here parenthetically. While I wasn't aware until I saw and read this narrative that the passport of Paul Robeson's wife was also taken, I was very well aware of the fact that his passport was taken. And not only was his passport taken, when they took his passport, keep in mind, he was by this time a world-renowned figure. Paul Robeson was the most famous, the most well-known African-American in the world. He was probably the most well-known person of African descent in the world, in America as well as in Africa. I mean, he was a star. He came from being a football star at Rutgers University, getting a degree in law, being this exceptional scholar who, just distinguished himself as a scholar, as an intellectual. But he didn't stop there. He became this huge figure, this star of stage and screen. He was also known for his ability to sing the folk songs of other cultures in their languages. This man was brilliant. He was world renowned. And when they took away his passport to prevent him from being able to travel abroad, they also made it impossible for him during those years to make a living in the United States because, they prevented him from being able to rent theaters, concert halls, to be able to ply his trade and to earn a living here in the United States. Those were some very dark and oppressive years for the Robeson family. There's a book that he wrote titled "Here I Stand." That was the first book on Paul Robeson that I read. And it was, it has such a powerful impact on Brother Saalakhan years ago when I first read that book. It had a powerful impact on me. And, this book, Here I Stand, was written at the time when he was confined to the United States, his passport taken, not able to travel abroad, not able to rent concert halls in the U.S. This was during that blackout period. And he wrote Here I Stand. It's a very powerful little book. Very powerful. But getting back to the narrative here. Their income vanished. Their friends abandoned them, subhanAllah. The FBI tapped their phones and opened a massive file on Islanda. They labeled her dangerous, quote unquote. They were right. She was dangerous because she refused to be silent. When the government finally returned their passports in 1958, the first thing she did was leave. She traveled to Ghana. She traveled to the Soviet Union. She traveled to China. She continued to write, to speak, and to organize against colonialism until her last breath. She died in 1965, just days before her 70th birthday. History often remembers her as the woman standing next to Paul Robeson, the supportive spouse. But that is a lie of omission. Islanda was the engine. She was the scientist who applied her analytical mind to the problem of oppression. She stood before the most feared men in America and told them they were the ones who had betrayed the Constitution. She proved that behind every great man, there is often a woman who is smarter, tougher, and utterly unafraid to tell the truth. That is such a beautiful tribute to this very special lady. I want to conclude today's broadcast with this. We in the United States of America, and indeed, common folk around the world, We're living in very, very, very challenging times. And the challenges that we are confronted with today are not going to go away anytime soon. I'm seeing here in the United States an administration, or I should say I'm a witness to an administration that is probably the most oppressive, the most repressive, the most corrupt administration that I can remember. And because we live in a world that has become so much smaller, you know, because of mass communication and because of the different types of technology having the global impact that it has today. I mean, the world has become smaller. We can instantaneously know what is taking place in other parts of the world, and we are able to see the impact of transnational policies of countries like the United States and Britain and France and Germany and Russia, etc. We're able to see the impact that many of these so-called democracies have on developing world nations, as they like to call them, developing world. One of the things that is very troubling for me is again the fact that there is so much open injustice. It's not even, you know, the folks who are responsible for it are not even trying to hide it. They're open with it, with the arrogant belief that there's nothing that can be done, you know, to stop their agenda. And this poses a tremendous challenge for those of us who love justice, who love, you know, who love peace, who crave for peace through justice. This becomes an enormous challenge for us. And I think it's important for as many of us as possible, you know, and I'm going to strive to the best of my ability as long as I have breath in my body and my faculties are intact to do my part. I think it's very, very important for us to remind ourselves and to remind each other of the fact that we have capacity, we have the ability to make a difference. And with that ability, with that capacity, we have an obligation to do what we can to make a difference. These are some very troubled times. But one of the things that gives me a lot of room for optimism is the fact that I'm seeing the kind of activism in my senior years that I wondered if I would ever see again. We had repressive governments in the past. I mean, the United States of America is a, if not, it's a study in the ebb and flow of struggle, of you know, the kind of struggle that nation states have to go through. We are we're a good example for the world. We've seen very bitter times. As a nation state, is about to celebrate 250 years. This coming July 4th, officially 250 years that this unfinished democracy has been in existence. It's this nation that is it's a contradiction in many respects. There is a good side, and then there is that ugly side. There is the America the beautiful, and then there is the America that is ugly as hell. And lately we've been seeing more and more that ugly as hell America, that threatening America that not only threatens its own people and threatens what it theoretically is supposed to stand for as a nation of liberty and justice for all, quote unquote, but a nation state that threatens the world. I'm sorry to say. With that being said, what gives me room for optimism is the fact that I'm witnessing something out here, that I wondered if I would ever see again in my life. The 60s was one of the most turbulent and consequential decades in American history. I make note of this often. It was one of the most consequential decades in American history, the 1960s. And what's interesting about the 1960s is that it is 1 century away from another very consequential decade, the 1860s, which is when the Civil War took place here in this country. And some would argue that we are now engulfed in another low-level civil war, with some wondering if it would at some point break out in an open civil war. We pray that that doesn't happen. But one thing that gives me room for optimism, and I'm going to end on this, it gives me room for optimism, a feeling for optimism. And that is the fact that we are witnessing the masses of people in different parts of the country rise up and take to the streets and speak out and push back. And I mean, the tens of thousands of folk that I'm seeing in different parts of the United States of America taking to the streets. Right now, one of the hardest hit areas of our country is Minneapolis, Minnesota. The state of Minnesota, and specifically the city of Minneapolis, has the largest Somali community in the United States. And those of us who have been following the news, we know that our Somali brothers and sisters here in the United States have been getting a lot of oppressive attention from this president of ours and the administration that blindly follows his lead. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of pain being experienced in Minnesota and in other parts of the country as well. It's not just Minnesota, but right now Minnesota, and specifically Minneapolis, is that is the primary focal point for the madness. But the thing that gives me room for optimism, and should give others room for optimism as well, is the pushback that is taking place by folk who are not Somali. The overwhelming majority of folk who are not Muslim and people of all races and ideological perspectives, people of different races, different religions, the overwhelming majority, again, not Muslim, taking to the streets consistently in the tens of thousands in New York City, in Minnesota, in California, in Texas, different parts of the country, taking to the streets. They're making it known, not in our name. And this is the way it must be. And inshallah ta'ala, this is what will, if anything is going to save the country, this is what it will be. I'm reminded of that verse in the Quran that reads, in translation of the meaning, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. And we can get nothing but what we strive for. So if we want justice, if we want peace, if we want a country that we can be proud in, it's going to require struggle. And in this struggle, brothers and sisters, friends, there cannot be any fence sitters. We must all be involved. On that note, I want to close out as we normally do with a short surah from the Quran that, especially in a time like this, it carries so much meaning, it carries so much weight as a reminder from above. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawassaw bil haqq. Wa tawassaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time, through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.